Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Kokti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm going to cue something. Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 16th day of March, Gaurapranim Eve, we are reading from, wait a minute. It is the 16th, right? On the 16th day of March, Gaurapranim Eve, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 57? 56. Okay. 56 at the top of page 122. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan. Did you say 56? Okay, I thought so. Bottom of page 122. Forgive me. Dukeshu Anuvigna Mana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhir Munuruchyate Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Manuruchyate Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vikataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Manuruchyate Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vikataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate Dukkeshu Anuvignamana Sukeshu Vikataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Go ahead. Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Dukkeshvanudvignamana Suteshu Vigataspriha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Dukkeshvanudvignamana Dukkeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Ladies? Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Dukkeshu Vanavignamana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspaha Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Stitadhi Munuruchyate. So you can tell me if there's someone out there, Tapas. Someone wants to chant? Okay. Dukkeshu, in the threefold miseries, Anudvignamanaha, without being agitated in mind. Sukeshu, in happiness, Vigataspaha, without being interested. Vita, free from raga, attachment, bhaya, fear, krodha, and anger. Stitadihi, whose mind is steady. Munihi, a sage, uchate, is called. Translation, Krishna says to Arjuna, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Na sa vrishir yasya matang nabinnam, Mahabharata Vanaparva 3:13, 117. But a Stita Dhir Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary muni. The Stita Dhir Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prashanta Nikshesa Manoratantara, Stotra Ratna 43, or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna, or Vasudeva, is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabhaha. He is called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna-conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment, here Prabhupada, by detachment he means aversion, is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna-conscious person is always steady in his determination. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this being Gaura name Eve, I'm going to leave a little time at the end for a few verses about Lord Chaitanya. I hope that's okay with everybody. Okay, so Krishna is now describing, he's answering Arjuna's question in text 54. Oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence, is in samadhi, that came up in the previous verse. How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? So Krishna is giving these characteristics, the first of which is prajahati yada kaman savan partam anogatan, that he doesn't, if the mind comes up with its usual thing of go here and enjoy that, watch out for that, sankalpa vikalpa. That's the material mind's function. In other words, it's full of all kinds of material desires, both positive and negative. We have to understand that aversion, the desire to avoid unpleasant things, is just the flip side of the desire to enjoy pleasant things. They're both in the realm of kama, of material desire. And that's why at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, second verse of the whole Bhagavatam, 1:1-2, we have this phrase, Dharma projitakaitavo tra. Tra means here in the Bhagavatam, all of these cheating religions are kicked out. And what's a cheating religion? A cheating dharma is one which is simply based on one's sense gratification. Here's a real dharma as defined in the next chapter, text number 6. Savai pungsang parodam yato bhaktarat hokshaje. Is that dharma that arouses or awakens our natural bhakti, or loving devotional attitude toward Krishna, which is defined by Rupa Goswami as completely selfless. There's no material desire there. It's not that we serve Krishna because we're hoping to get A, B, C, and D. As Lord Chaitanya said, nadanang, najanang, nasundarim. I don't want any wealth. I don't want any beautiful spouse. I don't want any great learning, kavitam, I don't want liberation. Birth after birth. He says birth after birth means I don't want liberation. I simply want your unmaterially motivated devotional service, birth after birth. So that desire for liberation is also a material desire. That's part of kama, according to Sridhar Swami's commentary in that second verse. So that was the first description in text 55. All of these material desires, and atmanev atmanatushta, being satisfied with this in the self. Now it's understood from the context in Prabhupada's purport that means satisfied with the relationship of the individual self with the Supreme Self. In other words, with being Krishna conscious, serving Krishna. That's fully satisfied. And he uses that word tushta, which comes up again later. This is a stita pragya. The whole idea is this is one whose consciousness is fixed in samadhi, in full meditation on Krishna at all times. So he goes on. And here, dukesh anudvignamana. The world is full of miseries. Dukkale mashashvatam. Krishna certifies it in chapter 8, that everywhere we turn, we're threatened either with immediate, current miseries, or the threat of new miseries, which itself is a misery, isn't it? If you're full of anxiety, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen, then even if you happen to be in a very pleasant situation, you're suffering from one of the threefold miseries, which is your own body and mind giving you trouble. So that's what this world is. But here he says, even when there's misery, either threatening or it's imminent, it's right in your face, anudvignamana, you remain equipoised. Perfect example, Haridas Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj, so many, Srila Prabhupada, all the great acharyas, they show a tremendous amount of tolerance, a tremendous amount of ability to not become disturbed even when there are so many disturbing elements. And a prime example of this was this incredible pastime of Prabhupada getting the land for the temple for Bombay, told wonderfully in the recent book by Guru Swami, recently published book. What is it? I'll build you a temple, I think. So many difficulties in that, including physical attacks by the police on the devotees in the temple who were there. Prabhupada was not there. He's traveling in India, and this happened. So many different things. And Prabhupada just tolerated, kept pressing forward and praying to Krishna, and he was able to get that land. It's a great victory. So that's dukesh anudvignamana. And then on the other side, when there's allurements for sense enjoyment, vigataspaha. There's no desire. You're able to simply not respond to that. The mind is not responding to that. And then this phrase here, which comes up again in the Gita in the 4th chapter, vita raga bhaya krodha. This is a real kind of measure of if we're advancing in devotional service. Being free from attachment, fear, and anger. Those are, if you remember, later on in this chapter, in a few verses, actually not too far away, we're going to encounter these two famous verses beginning 62. Dhyayado vishayan pungsa. That here he's describing the standard practice in which the conditioned living soul becomes entangled and degraded, really, by meditating on the sense objects and then going for them. And then dhyayado vishayan pungsa. Without Krishna consciousness, without being able to turn one's attention to Krishna, who is all attractive, who can attract our mind away from sense gratification, you're helpless in the material world. And one of the modes the mode of passion, mode of ignorance, even the mode of goodness, will conduct your mind and your senses, and you'll be attracted to some variety of sense gratification. So here, dhyayado vishayan pungsa. Instead of meditating on Krishna, dhyayan, you're meditating on the objects of the senses, then what happens? Dhyayado vishayan sangha, you develop attachment for them. Isn't that what advertising is all about? You're walking along, peacefully on the road, and there's a billboard, advertising something that they know you want, some drink or this or whatever. There's a whole industry behind how they can capture your attention in a short amount of time, in a few seconds, and plant that desire seed. Then you go and the desire seed is in there, you go on walking, But then later on you say, I think I need a drink. Maybe I'll get this beer, You don't even remember. There's a whole subliminal thing that happens, isn't it? There's an art to that. So you're helpless in this material world without Krishna. So what happens is you get attachment for it. And that attachment can grow into kama. Sangat sanjayate kama. And when that powerful desire, it's not just sex desire, but any powerful desire, is frustrated, you become angry. right? And whatever you perceive is blocking your sense gratification. Kama sanjayate krodha bhavati sangmoha. And by that anger, you can become completely bewildered. Prabhupada gives an example. I just heard him on the tape. He knew of a case where one brother killed another brother. Who knows why? You know, he stole his girlfriend or whatever. But, you know, and then he was, what have I done? What have I done? Well, the police are on the way, you know. And so he was going to be executed. The father pleaded, oh, I've lost one son. Now this is my only last son, you know, even if he's in prison. So the judge said, okay, give him life imprisonment. This is what happens in the material world. But you can imagine how liberating it is to be able to say no to these material desires. Instead of meditating on the object of the senses, you're meditating on Krishna. You're chanting Hare Krishna. You see? And that meditation on the name of Krishna, which is non-different from Krishna himself, attracts you away from all of this craziness that we've been going on for millions and millions of births. So then he goes on, Krodha bhavati sammohat smriti vibrama, you forget yourself, you use your memory. Smriti brangshad buddhi nasho, and then your intelligence is destroyed, and then you fall down in the material pool. You're finished. And then he gives the solution, raga dvesha vimuktais too, but one who can follow the regulative principles of freedom. Remember that phrase. It's a famous phrase from that translation of about 260 coming up. Regulative principles means don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But they free you. They're regulative principles of freedom. Otherwise, if you do this, then you become entangled and you become entrapped. So these regulative principles and of course all the positive things we do to cultivate Krishna consciousness is liberating us automatically. That's not our motivation, that's not our ultimate motivation, but that's a wonderful side benefit of Krishna consciousness. So here he's describing this devotee who's a very high devotee, who's fixed in Krishna consciousness, samadhi, vita raga bhaya krodha. He's free, vita, of attachment, fear, and anger. If you can be free of attachment, then you can actually talk about being free of fear. What is it? When you have nothing to lose, right? I'm sorry, that's kind of a line that's long. But there's some wisdom in that. But that's not the end of your endeavor. That is a side benefit. When you feel that, just like there's a pastime where Sanat Goswami, when he took sannyas, you know, he had millions of dollars basically. He had a tremendous influence. He was the right prime minister of the king, and he met Lord Chaitanya and gave up completely all desire for that, and just wanted to escape and quit, you know, the pastime. He's staying at home, studying the Bhagavatam, calling in sick, you know, equivalent of calling in sick. So the king sent the doctor over there and said, he's fine. He's not sick at all. He's just chanting verses from the Bhagavatam. So the king, the Shah, goes over there and said, what are you doing? You know, I need you to take care of the kingdom while I go and conquer some other kings. You know, you're causing me a big headache. So Sanatana said, I can't serve you anymore. So they arrested him. Meanwhile, Rupa Goswami had cashed out. What was he cashed out? He had a boatload of gold he had accumulated. He was the finance minister. And he divided it up in different portions. Half of it he gave to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. A quarter of it he gave to his family, because Prabhupada said they expect something, and if they don't get it, they're going to cause trouble. So they gave that. And then he had a whole lot of money left. So he gave it, now just get this, he put it in charge of a trustworthy grocer. Can you put like $12 million in the charge of one of our, do we have a trustworthy grocer nearby here? Anyway, so he puts it in, and that money he needs for emergency. And the emergency that Sanatana Goswami could use that gold to bribe the jailer, you know, a guard, to let him go, which he did. So he got out. So now he's free. You know, he's going along to Vrindavan, he's along the back roads, you know, so he's going through jungle and everything. And he's got one servant with him named Ishan. So they get to a part of the, it was called a rough terrain or hilly terrain. He needed help getting through it. So he comes upon an inn, and and he meets the innkeeper, and he says, maybe you know, out of your goodness of your heart, you know, we're just mendicants here, you can help us get across this hilly tract of land. And the innkeeper said, oh yes, fine, no problem, you know, and you stay the night and like that. So Sanatana Goswami he's a diplomat. He said, why is he so eager to help me? I didn't have to convince him. So he said, Ishan, you have something with you of value? I said, yes, master, I have 8 pieces of gold. So why you bring this death knell with us? Give me that. Actually, he said, I have 7 pieces of gold, sorry. So give me the gold. So he gave him 7 pieces of gold. And when the innkeeper came again, he said, here, take this gold. I don't need it. You can have it. But just out of the goodness of your heart, you just get us across. And the innkeeper, oh, thank you so much. I have an astrologer who told me that these 2 people who came have something of value, And I would have killed you for that. But now you relieve me of this sin. So yes, out of the good, you keep the gold, and I'll take you across this difficult terrain. So then Sanatana Goswami said, no, you take the gold. I don't want it. If you don't, someone else will kill us for it. So he did, and they got all the way across the terrain, and that was fine. And then the innkeeper said, yes, my astrologer told me I have 8 pieces of gold. So he said, Ishan, that was the servant, you have some balance left of the gold? Yes, master, I have 1 piece of gold. Take it and go home. Get on the bus and go home. And so now he was free. So he goes. He's walking along, and he happens to meet his brother-in-law along the way, on the way to Varanasi, where he knew Lord Chaitanya was. So the brother-in-law took one look at him. He'd been walking in the forest. He had rags on. He said, "What happened?" So nothing. I took sannyas. Well, okay. At least stay here for a few days. No, I'm not going to stay here for any time. So at least take this nice chadar to stay warm. I said, okay, I'll take that. So he gets to Varanasi, and he had grown out a beard, you can imagine. So he found out where Lord Chaitanya was, in a little kutir. And so he sat down on the stairs. And Lord Chaitanya could understand he was there. So he said, oh, Govinda, go and see if there's a devotee there outside. So Govinda came back and said, no, there's no devotee. It's just some Muslim mendicant or someone. Because he had the beard, And said, is there anyone out there? Yes, there's a Muslim mendicant. So bring him in. I'm sorry. I said, no, there's no devotee out there. He said, is there anyone there? Yes, there's a Muslim mendicant. Bring him in. So he brought him in, and Lord Chaitanya gave him a big hug, and on like that. So there was a great jubilation. He took a bath and had some prasadam. But then Sanatana Goswami saw him looking at that fancy chadar that he had, because you can imagine, this is from his brother-in-law. He realized, Lord Chaitanya doesn't like it. So he went to the bank of the Ganges, which runs through Varanasi, and he found some poor fellow there with his torn chadar, drying out on the beach. He said, let me give you this chadar for yours. And then he said, why are you joking with me? He could see that he was a distinguished gentleman, And I said, I'm not joking, you can take it. So he took it. So then he was completely free of his last little attachment, So it's tremendously liberating, and the 6 Goswamis were all like that. What is that? Chakvatuna Mishesha Bandapati Shaining Sada Tutshavat Budvat Dina Ganeshado Karunaya Kalpina Kantashrito. So 3 of them were very, very wealthy. Rupan, Sanatan, and Raghunath, especially. Raghunath would have been a billionaire today. And he he was trying to get out of it. He didn't want. He had to get married to a beautiful wife. He was his sole son. He was ready to inherit everything. He had met Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and he just wanted to go to Puri and renounce it. So finally, he escaped. So it says they immediately gave up. They didn't dilly-dally. Say, okay, well, I'll have 10 more years, and then no, immediately gave up everything, and as insignificant, all of that billions of dollars in sense gratification, tutshavat, budvat dina gadeshiko, for the sake of helping the dinas, the wretched of the earth, those who don't have Krishna consciousness, karunaya, out of their compassion, kopina kantashrito, they took simply kopin and rejected cloth, like you find, someone threw it out, it has holes in it, they would mend it up a little bit. They became as austere as it's possibly to become, especially Raghunath Das, incredible. So what was their state of mind? Prabhupada, I heard Prabhupada give a lecture where he's describing this, if a materialist is suddenly bereft of his wealth, he can't live like that. And he knew someone in Calcutta. During the war, some people get very rich and some people lose everything. Well, this person lost everything. And he couldn't live anymore. He committed suicide. Because all the attachment is still there. You're used to, if you're poor, you're born poor, you live poor, you die poor. You can somehow, that's all you know. So, but these great acharyas of ours, they voluntarily gave up all their attachments for the sake of Krishna. So what was their mentality? Gopi bhava rasamata dalahari kallola magno moha. That again and again they were diving and drinking in the nectar ocean of the gopis' love for Krishna, the highest level and most intense prema bhakti. So was it a good investment? Of course. They gave up millions of dollars and for the most valuable thing. And so that's what's being spoken of here, really. Prajahati yarakam sarvan, give up all material desires. That was the previous verse. And this was dukeshwaran vignamana, is that the difficulties that normally causes so much suffering don't bother him. And on the other side, the allurements for happiness, vigataspraha, there's no desire for them. Vitaragabhaya, and thus they remain free of attachment, fear, and anger. And they can remain steady in every circumstance in devotional service. Okay, now I just want to probably quote some very nice verses here in the purport. Just going to go through those real quick. So, nasa vrishya samatam dabindam. This is from this verse in the Mahabharata. Prabhupada would always quote, Tarko patishta shutiyo vibinna nasa vrishya samatam dabindam dharma sitatam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gatasapanta. This is describing the importance of having a preceptor, a mahajan, that one can emulate. Can not only get instructions from, but also emulate the behavior, follow in the footsteps. So what it says, nasa tarko patishta, logic can only get you so far. This going tarko patishta never comes to a conclusion because there's a certain skill in logic. Prabhupada learned that in school. He took Western logic and he studied some Western philosophers too, and he saw that all these Western philosophers, but they're just arguing with each other and not coming to the final conclusion. So tarko apratishta never gets you there, just arguing. Arjuna was doing that in the first chapter. Shrutiyo vibinna, even the Shrutis, even the Vedas seem to differ in so many ways. You'll find one recommending the worship of Shiva, one recommending the worship of Durga or Brahma. Do this, go there, do that. It's even there, without a preceptor, you're lost. I remember when I first started searching, I was in a library, I think, some library, and there were all of these green books. I forget what the series was, but they're all the Vedas and the Upanishads and all of this stuff. I had no idea what to do. I took one out and read part of it and put it back and went out and read. And that didn't help. Oh, I know what I should read. I should read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I hear that's interesting. I read part of that. Then, of course, what else? The Autobiography of a Yogi, right? I mean, everyone read that. No clear path where to go. They all differed in their ideas. So Tarko, Shruti Yovabinna, and the one Nasa Rishi Yasamata, the rishis have to differ with each other, otherwise you can't be a renowned rishi. Look at Western philosophy. There's a series of leading lights, right? There's the Plato and Socrates and Aristotle way back when, and then you get to the Middle Ages and you get the theologians and the Saint Thomas Aquinas and these, then you get more modern, and there's a whole series of them. I studied them. I forget their names now. But what do I do? What's the final goal? What's the absolute truth, right? Nobody can tell you. They don't. If they're honest, they don't claim to have it. Say, no, we're exploring. We're standing on the ocean and we're exploring this. So that doesn't help you. Just to have a lot of different voices of philosophy, they can be very skillful in there. So nasavi yasana binnam. Unless they differ from other rishis, then they're not rishis. So dharma tattvam nihitam guhayam. The truth of dharma is hidden within the guhai and within the heart of the great souls, of the realized souls. And therefore, mahajano yena gata sapanta. The path is that you need to follow in the footsteps and hear from the great mahajans. Now, of course, we have 12 main mahajans who appear in the different pages of the Bhagavatam. Narada Muni appears in every canto. And we have Bhishma Deva is one of them, Prahlad, the four Kumaras, Swayambhuva Manu, like that. And Yamaraj is in there. So they all come on the stage, if you will, in the Bhagavatam and give us instruction, and it all ties together. But we also need someone whom we can emulate the behavior of, someone, and that's why the importance of having a spiritual master, sadhu, guru, and shastra. And then he quotes this line, probably like this verse, Prashanta Nikshedam Manoda Tantaha. So this is a verse in the Stotra Ratnas, Prabhupada describes it, where he's praying simply that he'll be satisfied as your servant. Bhavantamevanuchadandarantara Prashanta Nikshesa Manoda Tantara Kadaham Aikantika Nitya Kinkara Paharshiyasyami Sanata Jivitam. So Bhavanta means you. Bhavantamevanuchadandarantara Prashanta, when will I have unbroken, selfless devotional service unto you? When will I be engaged in that? Prashanta nikshesa, and which will pacify, it's very pertinent here, he quotes it, I'm sure it's probably quoted by Baladev Vijayabhushan in his commentary. And this unbroken devotional service to you will completely pacify all of my unlimited material desires that are always being generated. Prashanta, become completely peaceful. Nikshesa manoda tantara. This is directly from off the verse. Nikshe means endless concoctions of the mind for enjoying different ideas. And if you don't have any at the moment, then you just go outside a little and you live, and your senses will provide you with unlimited desire. Nikshesa manoda tantara. Kadaham, when will I be your kadaham aikantika nitya kinkara? It's a wonderful phrase. Aikanta means without deviation. Nitya kinkara, the eternal humble servant, menial servant. And the last line, Paharshiyasam, I'll be very jubilant to be in this position of your servant and have such a wonderful master. He's offering this prayer to Krishna. Prabhupada, he quotes this fairly often. So that's the way in which one can remain fixed in devotional service. By that prayerfulness and that coming to the point of relishing the position as a servant and enjoying that position. That's where the real bliss lies, is in being a menial servant to Krishna. Just the opposite of what the ego is telling us to do. You could see how to do. Are you kidding? You guys are missing out. There's a party going on down the street there, right in the end. So there's another, they have it's completely 100% on the other side. Viparyaya. In other words, the material calculation is 100% opposite to the devotee calculation. How can I be, the servant of the servant of the servant? And the fools and rascals say, how can I be the master of all other masters? And then look, and the result of that mentality is what we got going on with Ukraine and this war, the craziness. Okay, any questions on text 56? Okay. No, okay. Let's go on to 57. Yak sarvatrana visnehas tattat prapya shubhashabam nabhinandatanadveshti tasya pragya patishtita. 124. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in knowledge. Purport. There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called technically samadhi. And that's what these verses are about, describing the devotee in samadhi whose consciousness is undeviatingly fixed on Krishna. As we explained, this is avismriti, means never forgetting Krishna's lotus feet, his service, and that never is difficult to come to. So there's this unaffected, without affection. Now, affection has two meanings. Of course, the normal meaning is to have like someone, love, have affection, like a mother has affection for the child, for all children, like that. But the other meaning, which Prabhupada sometimes used, is not so well known, but it's there in the Western Dictionary, and it's more prominent in the Oxford English Dictionary, and that is to not be affected by. If you're unaffected, then you have no affection. That means that you're not affected by something. We don't commonly use that in America. But that's what Prabhupada, how he uses it. He's unaffected by whatever. He has no affection. But the actual verse, anabhisneha, means that you don't have any affection, material affection. That's the idea. Is that the affection or love for something material, fondness, that's also a bondage. That all of our affection should be directed toward Krishna as devotees and things related to Krishna. But then, tattat prapa shubhashabham, nabhinantadinadveshti, that if you get something shubha, very favorable, you don't praise it. In other words, you say, oh, I'm so fortunate, how wonderful it is. Thank you so much for giving me this. And then on the other side, ashubham, that which is what? Evil, you don't rail against it. What are you doing? I did this, and you're doing this. Whatever it may have to be. Dveshti. These dualities are what keep us bound in the modes of nature. The mode of passion is the dualities are very prominent. Someone who's in mode of goodness is a little more riding above it, but they're also conditioned. But especially in the mode of passion, is that you have strong desires, and inevitably they must be frustrated at some point, and you look for who's frustrating you, become angry. You're not vita raga bhaya krodha. You're full of raga, bhaya, and krodha. So someone who is equipoise, this dhira word is very important. Dhira means is equipoised in happiness and distress. So that's there. And okay, I think it's 8 o'clock, so I'm going to stop there and share some verses about Lord Chaitanya. So we'll pick up on Monday on text 58. Okay, and this is the famous Kurma, is the tortoise who was drawn his limbs. Nice analogy. So I'll give you a little prelude. They asked me to speak tomorrow. It's only by accident that I found out that I would have been waiting for the speaker to sit down and say, "Oh, Dravida, you're supposed to speak." Luckily, I have a few days to prepare. But at the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is something called the Mangalacharan. Mangalacharan is a series of verses that preludes, that is the preface to any major work of literary work in Sanskrit in our tradition. Even sometimes a chapter. The chapter 87 of the 10th canto, which is the prayers of the personified Vedas, has its own Mangalacharan. In the commentary of Vishwanath Chakrabarti, our acharyas have written extensive commentary, and it's so long and rich that he has his own Mangalacharan. So the Mangalacharan has different features. It gives the subject of the book. And in these transcendental books, they also offer obeisances and blessings to the reader, and so forth. And so I'm going to read a few of these. In our Mangalacharan, there are 5 or 6 verses about Lord Chaitanya, then there's 3 or 4 about Lord Nityananda, then a couple to Advaita, and then I think the Panchatattva, like that. And so these first few, they're worth contemplating, if not memorizing. So he begins the book, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Isha Misha Avatarakan Tat Prakasham Tat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangakam. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Now, when you read a little bit further, you'll realize that he's really describing like the Panchatattva there. But first he offers to the Gurun. This is the way you always offer first to the spiritual master. Just like we come into the temple, you offer your obeisance to Srila Prabhupada. If your spiritual master comes into the room, naturally offer your obeisances. So he offers obeisance, interesting, to the plural, Gurun, meaning that and this will become clear later in the first chapter, it's all about the gurus. Notice plural, is the Diksha Guru, of course, and also the Shiksha Gurus are very important, those who instruct but may not be initiating. And there's also Vartma Pradarshika Guru, those who show you the path. We heard a wonderful account of how Madhusudan Prabhu was the Vartma Pradarshika Guru of Satyaraj. Those of you who read Back to Guided magazine, he's written several books. And I remember him, he was there in Brooklyn when I joined. And that he met Madhusudan on the train, on the subway train. And he was distributing, and he saw Satyaraj reading a Bhagavad Gita, but it wasn't Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. He was still in high school. He was a senior in high school at that point. And he was reading another Gita, and Madhusudan came up to him and said, "You're reading poison." Can you imagine? The boldness? And he was kind of shocked, because he was a senior in high school and he was an adult, so well, what's going on here? But he said, but because there were only 6 chapters in that Bhagavad Gita, don't get me started why, but he was a little suspicious about it anyway. So Madhusudan said, okay, here's the real Gita. You can have it for free, but you have to agree to come to our temple and tell me what you think of it. So Satyaraj said, oh, that's a good deal. Okay, I'll do that. So he showed up. He came later, and then a week later, Prabhupada came, and he met Prabhupada, and so he became a devotee. But even after he joined, Madhusudan was helping him, So that's Vartma Pradarshika Guru. It's very important. We all have that. We met someone. Very few of us, if any of us, I didn't, so therefore no one else did, actually met Prabhupada first. But we can meet Prabhupada in his books. And so all of us actually met Prabhupada. So he's offering the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnation, this is plenary portions, energy, and the Supreme Lord himself, Lord Chaitanya. And then there's this beautiful verse that I chant every morning when we greet the deities. It's about Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya. This is verse 2. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanandao Sahoditao Gaudodihe Pushpabandao Chitrao Shandao Tamonadao. Now those who know a little bit of Sanskrit know that AU is a dual ending. So he's offering obeisance to Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen miraculously, simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. So I say miraculously because the moon and the sun don't usually rise together, right? So this is a wonderful verse glorifying Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda at the beginning. And then there's a verse here that's kind of a foundational verse for our whole movement. And that is a verse that defines Lord Chaitanya. I think it was written by Sup Damodar. As God, Yadadvaitam Brahmo Panashadi Tadapyas Satanubha Yatmantar Yami Purusha Etisyo Sankshe Vibhava Shadaishwaraya Purno Yahiya Bhagavan Sasvayamayam Nachetanyat Krishna Jagadipadatattvam Padamiha. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body. And the Lord known as the Supersoul is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with 6 opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. Now, I just want to point out the importance of this verse. This whole movement rests on a couple of very simple propositions that we have to believe in order to take part in the movement. One is that there is a God. If you're really convinced and absolutely, your strong conviction that there's no God, you're not going to become a Hare Krishna. You probably won't be interested in reading about God. You say, oh, this is all mythology, forget it. So there's a God. And then, okay, you believe in God. Then the next proposition is that Krishna is God. Or your God is Krishna, whoever you believe. Krishna is God. And then the next one is that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Those three are foundational. Rupa Goswami wrote a whole book proving from the Vedas, you have to have Vedic literature, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now the Bhagavatam itself, in chapter 3, 1-328, would say, Ete Changsa Kala Pungsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. This is said to be designated by Jiva Goswami as the Paribhasa Sutra, which means the statement in a book that all the other statements are founded on. So that's the statement. Krishna is God. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. There are many personalities of Godhead, but Krishna is the supreme. Mattak Paratanam Nanyat, he says right in chapter 7 here of the Bhagavad Gita that we're reading. So, but even those who believe Krishna is God, not every one of them believes that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. And that is what this is all about. That yes, the Brahman effulgence emanating, that's his effulgence. He is the super soul, and he is Shadaishvarya Purno, the same Lord who is full of 6 opulences, which is the definition of Krishna. I won't get into that. So there's nothing beyond Lord Chaitanya. Now why did he appear? Why did he appear? If Krishna had not appeared as Lord Chaitanya, there'd be no Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So why did Krishna appear as Lord Chaitanya? For two categories of reasons: the internal reason and the external reason. So first he describes the external reason. Anarpita chadim chadat karunaihavati nakalo samapi hitamunnato jvararasam sabhakti shayam hari purata sundara jitikadhamma sandipita sada vidya kandade spututta vakshachi nandana. Now this is one of those benediction verses. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before: the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. So this is a benediction. May he be in your heart, and he has appeared in order to benedict us, although benedict is not actually a verb. Bless. He come to bless us. So we've run out of time, but we'll continue in this theme tomorrow. I'm going to some of these verses and a few more are going to be the basis of my little talk tomorrow. And then, don't miss it, we're going to have a special slideshow of an Ashtaka. Ashtaka is 8 verses by Rupa Goswami in his Stavamala about Lord Chaitanya, and I put them into a little poem. I have a slideshow also to go with it. Tomorrow night. They asked me to speak. I don't know why, but they get stuck with it. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.